Former cult members of Reddit, at what moment did you go, oh frick, I'm in a cult? Obligatory. Not me, but my friend's grandfather was a farmer growing up, think 1940s or 50s. It was kind of a remote town, but he would talk to other farmers and buyers when he went down to the market. One day, an acquaintance of his tells him that they're having a meeting with whole bunch of other farmers and farmhands and that he should come and join. My friend's grandfather, thinking it's some sort of farmers alliance, is like, sure, why not? Friend's grandpa goes to the meeting and is a bit confused when it's not about farming at all. It's a KKK meeting. He has an oh crap, I'm in a cult moment, but waits till it's over because he doesn't know what will happen if someone sees him trying to leave. Meeting ends. He goes home. Dude tries to invite him again and friend's grandpa nopes out of there. Some have brought up that the KKK isn't a cult, but more of a hate group gang. I always thought it was a cult, but hey, you learn something new every day. Carry on. It was the summer during middle school when a friend of a friend invited us out to a camp that lasted a week. It has so much awesome stuff like paintball, four-wheeling, swimming on the lake. It was right on. Sounded kick-ass. So I went. It was an ultra-religious camp. We had to give our phones up when we got there. First hour of the day was praying, then 30-minute breakfast followed by another hour of praying, then 2 hours of alone time where you couldn't go back to your rooms or do anything other than sit and talk to Jesus and God, then another hour of praying, then 30-minute lunch, then 30-minute prayer, then a good 4-5 hours of free time to do all those activities, then another hour of prayer, then 30-minute dinner, then prayer. Then we got to go back to our rooms to talk to our assigned counselor, who led us in evening prayer. I'm not saying that this place was a cult, but I had my thoughts when they led us on a march to a big fire and made us lay down in a massive field staring at the stars while they chanted prayers over a microphone one night that week. Frick, that place. Another thing that I vividly remember was when we were laying down in the field they began to hand off the microphone to people who had anything they wanted to share. One girl began to talk about how her and a few of her friends were asking each other what if humans are actually just robots? She got so worked up over it she began to cry into the mic. Another vivid memory was laying down in our bunks late at night and talking about how the universe came to be. I mentioned the Big Bang Theory and they all began to agree unanimously how stupid that theory is and there's no way that happened. Right, but a big dude in the sky made it. That makes way more sense. Geez, I've been to Jesus camp before, and while it certainly had its religious theme and plenty of discussion on the Bible, it was still a summer camp where you did fun activities the vast majority of the day. What you described sounds like torture. I was part of a cult church when I was invited soon after I started attending school at UF. Since I was looking for a church to attend, this worked out great. I was invited by a real nice guy and started attending every service, getting to know everyone and making great friends. The services seemed to be a bit extreme, a little too fire and brimstone, but I decided to ignore that and focus on what I agree with. I started getting a little uncomfortably when they tried to make me recruit people on the street, but I really felt uneasy when they said I shouldn't hang out with my friends that followed other religions and even family members, because they are not good influences. Despite all of this I kept going mainly because of the people there. It wasn't until my sociology class did a unit on cults and how they work, being nice and friendly and then trying to separate people from their friends and family so they won't be persuaded to leave. After that I decided to stop attending services, although I stayed in touch with some people. It's a real shame because most of them are born again Christians and don't know that a real church isn't like that. They're great people, just led by the wrong person. For me it was when, after almost a decade of being raised in and working for them, I got fired by them. The reason being I had watched a Chris Rock video, and this was reported by one cult leader's menace spies he apparently had in each department. Found this out after a lot of digging once I had become disillusioned. He decided it was proof that I was not pure in Christ and had to be removed from the flock of Christ. The idea that something so innocent as a comedy YouTube could be a grievous sin against God, as he put, struck me as beyond ludicrous and awakened a very cynical part of me, and so the journey of searching for truth began. When the church spent more time talking about how we should bring people out to church than they actually talked about the gospel, I decided it was time to go. When I was told that proceeding in a ceremony and receiving a gift that was a religious rite of passage to adulthood would require me to take upon myself certain sacred obligations, and that I could not know them beforehand, I could either leave then in front of my family or essentially sign a blank check to swear any oath required of me later on. My grandfather was getting involved in Scientology when he was in college. He says he left after they told everyone to mistreat someone who had left the group. Apparently they taught him some good meditation and self-confidence exercises. He's happy with what he got out of them but glad he didn't get too deep. When I was 14, I was put in on speech fast. I could not talk, and if I did every sentence I spoke I would have to do 5 push-ups. I could not eat with my team. I had to skip meals. I was put in a prayer room when my team was going out for fun events. Prayer room was essentially solitary. I was on speech fast for 5.5 weeks because I could not memorize James to a 90%. During that time, they forced me to talk about my pee addiction. I did not have one. They forced me to tell my parents via phone call that was monitored. I was forced to do demolition on an old VA hospital that they owned in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm 31 and I still have dreams of that place. My oh frick moment was probably when I found out that South Park was more honest about the founding of my religion than my actual religious leaders were. Down the oh frick rabbit hole I went and uncovered everything. Me too, man. Me too. I knew a lot about church history compared to most members, and even I thought the Urim and Thummim were used for the entire translation of the Book of Mormon. Nope. Rock in a Hat is the official story, no matter how much the church tries to hide it. Obviously though, it wasn't a rock in a hat or the magic glasses. It was all made up. When I did an internship with their Bible college, read 5 days a week, 8/5, of free office labor, then expected to also serve the church for the youth group on Friday night, 6 whenever cleanup finished, usually 11, after being there since 8 AM, Saturday night church, 5/8, and 2x Sunday service, 6/12. I also tried to work in my spare time so that I could afford the fuel to drive there every other day and eat. But then I started getting in trouble for not tithing, plus missionary offerings, plus building fund offerings, plus. Oh, and I was late one Saturday because my actual paying job needed me to stay back 30 minutes. Well, they called for an exorcism. I had been taken over by demons and serving the Lord wasn't my priority anymore. Despite the 50-60 hours a week of free work I was giving them, while paying for Bible college, which was 2 nights per week. So I left, realized I was gay and lived happily ever after. They only stopped chasing me when I changed phone number, blocked them all on social media, and moved house. When multiple people told me that they worked 8 hours extra per day on Saturday and Sunday, at home and paid, in addition to working quite long hours during the week, because life is supposed to be all about achievement and publishing, this cult was called a PhD program in research science. As someone who is with someone who is about to go through this, I'm nervous. Raised Mormon in the Bible Belt, I had a Southern Baptist friend that liked to argue with me about religion. When I was 18, he told me about crazy secret handshakes in Mormonism. My response: Nate, I've been a Mormon my entire life and I've never heard anything about secret handshakes. I don't know where you heard that, but it's false. A week later, I went through the Mormon temple for the first time and learned all the secret handshakes. After I went through the ceremony, I sat next to my dad in the celestial room and he asked me what I thought. I swore to Nate on my life a week ago that there is no such thing as secret handshakes in Mormonism. My dad's response was the typical Mormon, programmed response: they aren't secret, they're sacred. It took me 10 more years to leave Mormonism, but that was the first crack in my foundation. RX Mormon, Reddit.com RX Mormon. Till that Mormons have secret handshakes. When I learned our founding prophet would send men on missions so he could hump their wives and daughters. Or maybe when I learned our cult had over 40 billion in the stock market and over 100 billion in assets, but only uses 0.5% of the donations it receives to help the poor. Or maybe when our 94-year-old prophet's latest revelation was to take vitamins. OMG, that must be why my family was talking so much about vitamins at Thanksgiving. I thought it was weird since they generally keep a healthy diet and don't need them. When I found out I'd been lied to about foundational aspects of the church, and that the founder married a 14-year-old and secretly married tons of women without telling his first wife. I was born into it and grew up in it. It hit me when I finally, and accidentally, took a step back while my mum was talking about it and thought, dang lady, that's some crazy crap. LOL. I was about 16 at the time. When they followed me to the bathroom, I literally went into the stall, prayed to God for some sort of sign that my suspicion that I was in a cult was correct and I wasn't just crazy paranoid, opened the stall door, and saw that they were right outside of it, waiting for me. That was my sign. So, I'm not sure if this counts, but my father stopped going to the Creation Museum's church after he approached the pastor and asked why he and my brother were not allowed to have communion. The pastor told him, I understand your concern, but we feel that since we don't know how good of a Christian you are, you and your son shouldn't be allowed to partake in communion, as it may contaminate innocence with your sins. They also demanded a huge amount of tithe and insisted at the time that any church other than theirs may not always be true Christians and that going to churches other than theirs was wrong. They also insisted that people attending the church should also visit the Creation Museum, and if you questioned anything in the museum it was sinful. They also told my dad and brother that unbaptized children shouldn't be near baptized children, presumably for the same contamination reason. We were just talking about it night before last and my father said, I swear to you that's a cult in the making. Haven't been there since. Also, my cousin was involved in the Mars Hill Church in Seattle. He was involved with a girl for over 2 years, planning on marrying her, etc. Eventually, they decided to sleep together. This is outrageously frowned upon at Mars Hill. And afterward the girl went to the Mars Hill pastor and told him that she and my cousin had had relations out of wedlock. Cue Mars Hill pastor bringing my cousin to the front of the church in front of the entire church body and publicly humiliating him, telling him he'd go to heck, etc. The girl was forbidden from ever even being in the same room as my cousin, and has refused to speak to him since. My cousin tried to defend himself, and they started publicly and privately harassing him. People even going so far as to harass him in public places like coffee shops and grocery stores. Eventually Mars Hill did a public apology to my cousin, and my cousin left the country entirely and now lives in Australia as a raging atheist and xenophobic, dating a girl nobody in our entire family likes. Our aunt and uncle who he had been staying with in Seattle at the time are prominent figures in Seattle, and while my aunt is Buddhist, my uncle occasionally visits Mars Hill. They tried to get the pastor to apologize more appropriately and he refused, telling my uncle it didn't matter anymore because my cousin made his choice. Couple years later Pascal and his wife had a sleep-in or whatever where they spent all day in bed on the roof of the church to display how a truly loving couple should be, and my aunt and uncle were pretty pee. I swear up and down Mars Hill is a cult and that pastor is the crappiest person in Seattle. I can guarantee God disapproves of him. The Hare Krishna group. When they said I should only pray to Lord Krishna and not anyone else, that's when I realized this is a cult. As a Hindu, I respect all the Hindu gods. Even Lord Krishna himself respected all the Hindu gods. Every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, attendance for the meeting was mandatory. Every Saturday from 9 AM to 10 PM we had to go to the event, in uniform, rain or shine. Twice while I was there we were bused across ND to Montana to go before crowds of thousands, most of whom screamed at us. It all centered around this one guy who called the shots, but he had lieutenants who did his bidding and would occasionally lead us. It was pretty demanding, but it seemed pretty fun. Lots of camaraderie, but all my friends who hadn't joined up thought it was pretty weird and a lot of work for no clear benefit. But besides that, marching band was a blast. LOL. Hit it right on the head there. Marching band is the only good cult. No one else believes us. My sister was walking with her baby in the stroller. The baby was maybe 6 or 8 months, completely helpless to his own needs. The sun was really bright and the baby started crying because the sun was in his eyes. So I went to close the hood of the stroller so as to provide shade, and my sister stopped me because it's a sin to build a house on the Sabbath. And apparently closing the hood of the stroller is equivalent to building a house. Bonnet, for those who are familiar, the fact that a mother would allow her own helpless baby to be in pain and even go blind, was the last straw for me. I had been drifting away privately for a very long time, but that made me decide to go cold turkey on religion. I guess most people consider JW a cult. I'm not sure that I do, but I think the most pivotal moment for me was actually when one of the traveling speakers at our congregation urged us not to just take their word for it, to investigate and find the truth, and if we found something that was more truthful, to pursue that. I did. I'm an agnostic existentialist, with many other strongly held beliefs. None of them are compatible with JW. I wish I remembered who that guy was, because I feel like I owe him a lot. My whole belief system is based on the idea of doing as much research as possible, considering all points of view, and being open-minded. Ultimately, I decide what I believe based on logic, evidence, practicality and personal preference in cases where there is no clear-cut answer. I personally believe JW is a cult. They tell their followers to read the Watchtower and nothing else, and to obtain their information from only their literature. They discourage you to doubt their truth, and if you do, you are disfellowshipped and shunned by the entire group, including family. When I was 12 and stopped going to church BC, I didn't want to, and they sent other 12-year-olds to my house every Wednesday for activity night to try and get me to come back to the church. It continued through high school until I finally called an elder and told her to stop harassing me because I didn't want to go to church and didn't believe in a god. That stopped them real quick. Also, this was a Mormon church. It was never hidden that the cult that my parents joined and that I was born into was an exclusive religious group. Sure, they are religious, but that's not all they are by a long shot. I was always very curious but was not given much information and did not have normal friends to compare my experiences with. I was 13 when I first gained access to a computer with working internet. Google was really my friend that day. I decided from then on that I had no part in that crap. I'm 22 now and it's freaking ridiculous the amount of fricked up crap I'm still learning about them. For the curious, Google Children of God, COG, or the Family International. I was flipping through books about cults, because it's always been a topic that interested me, and I kept finding my religion in them. I laughed it off because those authors are so stupid. They have no idea what they're. Oh frick. When they kept taking more and more of my time, it got to the point where I realized my church viewed everything outside of church as evil or a complete waste of time. I knew this wasn't true and a miserable way to live. Once I realized how miserable I was, the rose-colored glasses came off and it all fell apart almost immediately. Mormon, BTW. Not me, but I deprogrammed my old Jehovah's Witness college roommate. He wouldn't shut up about it. He threw my Bible away and replaced it with their book, so I spent 3 months deprogramming him. He's officially shunned by his family, but he's happy to be with his older brother who had previously been shunned. While I wasn't in a cult, I was part of a community that recruited leaders with cult-like tendencies. Like others in the thread, my wake-up call happened after they repeatedly said, from the stage, "We encourage you to question everything." But when I began to question the details of their belief systems, they told me to stop it. Obviously, I left and had to restart my life. A little late to this thread, but whatever. A friend's mom was raised in a cult and they thought that she was the messiah. Obviously she noped out at age 18, and now is a wonderful parent and a successful scientist. When things started to make less sense as I grew older, started to find serious plot holes in the holy doctrine of the cult, no one would answer my questions. I was punished a lot for being a rebellious kid, just because I wouldn't participate in activities without questioning them. Everyone outside the cult was evil, a slave to the system, including former cult members. When my older sister left, I remember crying hysterically because I'd been told that backsliders go to heck. When I had school friends over that weren't in the cult, back before the cult forced all cult children be pulled out of public school and into homeschooling, school friends were weirded out, went to school friends' houses and noticed they had everything I was told was evil to have, such as movies, books, stickers, etc. We could only listen to watch media produced by the cult. Some old PG movies were okayed after careful screening. When I got a hold of some material written by former cult members laying out its horrible history and talking about life outside, when I realized all the freaking stuff wasn't normal. When the son of the leader tried to kill his mom for physically shaming him throughout his childhood, killed his childhood babysitter instead. then killed himself. I sat in commune meetings reading a statement denying the accusations, condemning the son as insane and going to heck, and mourning the death of the babysitter. Like, you guys, the stuff his accusations were based on were all documented. Literally it's all on paper, pictures, recordings. I think that day was the day the last bit of my faith died. Thankfully my family left the cult soon after. I was a kid in the 80s, so we grew up with the whole OMG cults are everywhere here are the signs thing. Then when I was 14, I went to a teen retreat weekend at my mother's church, because several friends were going and so was the really cute boy from the Catholic school, and they served all carbs, no protein, took away our watches and alarm clocks, and did a bunch of warm-ups icebreakers with lots of high energy, hugging, cheering, everyone's awesome vibe. I left, because cult, but I was bummed, because that boy was seriously cute. The satanic panic. So for a while I did hot yoga, once a week. I'm a guy, don't get me wrong. I think yoga is great and has many mental, spiritual and physical fitness benefits, but some of these people really take it too far. One time before class the instructor asked me why I was doing yoga, and I told her that I liked it in conjunction with weightlifting, running, golf, softball and hiking. Then, I crap you not, she says, but all you need is yoga. You don't need those other things. I looked her in the eye and said, but I like those other things. I still did the class. But yeah, yoga is pretty close to a cult sometimes. When they stopped allowing children who had gay parents to be baptized, they claimed to believe in Jesus, and I knew that Jesus wouldn't do that to kids. When at IFB Bible College I was at chapel and a certain event occurred. A guy and girl had fricked out of wedlock and she had gotten pregnant. Supposedly they both agreed to go up in front of the whole school and apologize. It was the most demeaning and scary thing I had seen in a church environment. The 18-year-old girl buried her head in his shoulder and cried. He proceeded to tell all 130 classmates not to sin like they did. Everyone went up to her and said they were sorry afterwards. Never mind the fact that the school kicked them out. After that I started to realize I had to be in S cult. Months after I left because of being gay, which is another story, I was sitting in a domestic abuse workshop at my college because I had some time between class, because I like to learn new things. I sat there, I realized I was abused, and the source of my abuse was mainly due to our religion. I did extensive research since then and seen that they cover up child physical shaming cases. To show their hypocrisy, they will remove and shun couples who are not married who they suspect have sinned. Yet, they require abuse victims to have 2 witnesses. My family cut me off entirely and refused to look at me if they see me in public. They threatened to call the police on me several times, once for attempting to attend my grandmother's funeral. They do all this so 8 men can live in upstate NY in their new mansion of a facility they call Bethel, their world HQ, all on the backs of sheeple who volunteer to contribute, while also being discouraged from higher education and working full-time jobs. They are evil people in a beautiful facade. I had a few nails in the coffin, so to speak, when I discovered that my neighbor, Sri Galamdasa, was a notorious diddler. When a Swami backhanded a new devotee and I was chastised for mentioning it publicly. When people would disappear in the middle of the night, and I'd never see them again. And when it was always the fault of the people who left, never the ones who drove them out with mistreatment. When a group of young adults who had been raised in it threatened to storm the temple if Dhanurdhara Swami, who had allowed so much child physical shaming to occur directly under his watch, were allowed to give classes and lectures there anymore. When I realized that there was absolutely no appropriate or effective way to address any grievances, ever, I think this was really the one that did it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.